All right, so get that over like this. We gotta zoom in because it always shows the wrong thing to start with. So let's go over here, and
Can't,
you're gonna
they
be a
can't just make
surprise
it easy.
off-screen guest. So we'll have you show up in a minute.
All right.
But there is the beautiful interface of WaveRazer.
Now I can't see the desktop.
I can share the desktop. I think I can do that. Well, let's see here. Let me get see. YouTube is live, and so I'm going to go down here and go to Facebook real quick. Hi everybody. I'm just sending out my links to everybody so everybody knows what's going on. And
Can't,
you're gonna
they
be a
can't just
surprise
make it easy.
off-screen guest, so we'll have you show up in a minute.
All right.
So there's audio flying all over the place. But lovely. There is the beautiful interface. So let's pause that of WaveRazer.
Now I can't.
Huh? Let's see here. So if I go, I need to go to Skype. And because you see me now, right?
I see you.
Oh. And okay, good. Let's see. So if I go to Skype and say, where's Skype? I just don't want to blow things up. Whenever I try to get too much going on, I don't think I can share screen.
That's okay.
I just don't want to risk putting too much. My computer's got limited horsepower for this stuff. So
Yeah, no problem.
okay, 1 second. Live stream. And it still shows the old graphics. It's so YouTube's graphics suck. I updated all the graphics so it looks really good, but the link still shows like graphics from a long time ago. Live on live stream with Taiho. And more. Yeah, and again, it's a programming hang. It shows like that did that from a couple days ago. That's interesting. So, hey, good afternoon, everybody. We've got people already. 29 people are watching on YouTube. Let's see what's happening in the chat here. Hi, guys. Welcome to the stream. We have everything happening all at once. By the way, the obligatory promotion, I have a special going on this weekend. Sabersphere, or not Sabersphere, but OMG. No, I'm all messed up. Hold on. Right here, Kid Anthem, Omnilog. This library is $20 this weekend instead of $35, and I have the new patch browser happening so that you can play and hear the actual patches on the website. So let me put into the link into the chat for where that's at. We got people in the UK. We got people all over the place saying hello. Taiho, you ready to join the conversation? Everybody say hello to Taiho, the creator, the godfather of WaveRazer. Hi.
Hello.
How are you?
Great. Thanks for having me, Skippy.
Oh, it is my pleasure. Yes, Taiho knows me as Skippy from way back in the day. We should share a little past history. Back in the day, Taiho was the head of voicing with Alesis. And at that time, I was friends with Mike Peak, who had been done some programming, some Korg things, and then he started working with Alesis. And you had me working on the DM20, which was a fun 20-bit drum module. That was a lot of fun to work on. And other various things through the going. I didn't get to play with Andromeda. That's one of the things I was regretting in looking back. It's like one of the synths I didn't really get a chance to contribute to.
Oh man, why not? You were probably working on some giant Korg product at the time, or
it was probably something like that. So
yeah.
So give us a little history. Who is Taiho? So people watching this, then we'll talk about this wonderful new instrument you have created.
Well, I'm a synth designer, and it's kind of a long road to getting there. But I've always loved synthesizers and music, and got my first synth, which is a Moog Prodigy, back when I was 9.
Mm-hmm.
and then played electronic music all through high school, and just really lucked out. I knew some people and ended up working on the Alesis Quadrasynth, which was their first synthesizer. And I worked on pretty much every synthesizer at Alesis up until Fusion. And then after Fusion, I moved to M Audio, worked on Venom there.
Venom.
And
That was a fun synth.
thanks. Yeah, I had a great time working on that. And then I've been working with Traction, doing their biotech synth and their new synth collective, which is a lot of fun because WaveRazor was developing at the same time, and I don't know if synths are pretty complicated, and you get a bunch of synthesizers in your head, and then it just gets super confusing trying to keep up with all the patches. The possibilities of parameters and stuff like that. It's pretty crazy. So if I'm a little bit scrambled today, that's kind of why.
Is that something that was in Venom? Oh wait, what was that? How funny.
Yeah, totally.
$20 this weekend. I have to multitask. It's very hard because I'm not very good at multitasking. Get it
I
here.
hear
that. Awesome. Well, give us a little history on WaveRazor. What was the impetus that started this? How does one go from? I mean, you have this experience with synth design, so it's not like this isn't like, okay, if you want to be a synth, but we can get to that question. But what was the path that led to what we now have as WaveRazor?
Well, in 2012, Avid sold M Audio to In Music, and we had a history back from Alesis where there's basically no way that I could continue with M Audio at that point.
Right.
So I was trying to figure out what I should be doing.
Yeah.
And along came Rob. I'd worked with Rob Rampley back at Alesis. We started almost around the same time in 1993, and then he left to go to Line 6 probably in the late 90s. We started off as sound designers together, but he became a coder fairly soon after that. And he was the software architect at Line 6 for more than a decade.
Wow.
He's got a lot of chops.
Yes.
And
serious chops.
Yeah, and he left Line 6 right about the same time that I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
And we were talking, and we were like, we haven't made synths in a long time. Wouldn't it be fun to work on synthesizers again? And, can we actually make a company and do this? And, we were just crazy enough to
try to make it happen. Yeah.
And he had this idea for WaveRazor kicking around in the back of his head, and we talked about it and refined it, and I was like, I think this could be a product. It's pretty interesting. Let's see, what we can do with it. He already had a development platform worked up, so we started experimenting with it, and it turned out to be a pretty cool thing. It was making some really interesting sounds right away.
Right.
So we decided to pursue that. And we're a super small company at this point. I'm used to Alesis or M Audio where we have a lot of resources.
Right. But, it's all you, baby, isn't it?
Oh man.
Yeah.
It's definitely just us, tiny crew. So it's taken about 3 years to get that whole thing together.
Yeah.
And be able to announce it to everybody, and then hopefully ship next week finally.
Yes. How long have you been working on this? What was like the time frame? How long?
Yeah, it was really about 3 years.
Wow.
Rob had a platform to develop on for a while before that.
Yeah.
Um, and we had tossed around some ideas for other products, but we settled on WaveRazer. It was the one that we were most excited about. And from that point, from 3 years ago till now, it's just been trying to iterate and figure out what it was that we have, because there are a lot of new weird parameters in there.
Yes.
And
As
we
someone
have
that's
to.
had a chance to look under the hood, I can verify it has. Now, WaveRazer is a new form of synthesis, and you have applied for a patent for it, correct?
Right. So we're patent pending right now for this WaveRazer oscillator that basically slices up the waveforms and recombines them. So if you imagine a wave cycle, like a sine wave, it goes up and then it goes down below zero and comes back up. It's pretty symmetrical.
Right.
If you chop it up into halves or quarters and then replace those sections with different waveforms, that's kind of what WaveRazer is doing. And you could see it visually too. If you look at the oscillator view, you can see the waveforms in the different segments.
Right. What patch would you like me to play for people to hear for the first time to kind of explain the synthesis?
There's some wave templates that are very clear about what waveforms that they're using.
Right.
They start, the name is like wave and then a
the
name of
waveform,
waveform.
like EX log or sine. How about sine? Start with wave chop sine.
Sine is probably good.
So would this be the wave chop, or do I go down looking to the bottom to find just wave sine?
Down, yeah, it's alphabetical. So like down at the bottom would be wave sine.
Wave sine. So let's talk about the synthesis, and we'll play it so you can hear it. The concept is that there's this waveform that we've looked at and we've seen in the oscilloscope in past lessons when we're talking with synthesis, and a triangle has a specific shape. The thing that WaveRazer does is it will take that triangle or that waveform and divide it into like a pie, multi-segments. And it's able to manipulate each piece of that pie to be a completely different waveform or to be modulated in real time. It's really exciting, and it definitely has a different character to the sound of it. This is basically, just so you guys know, this is basically the version 1. I mean, Taiho has a week because of some stuff going on with Traction and the way they're going to release this. He's got a little bit more time to keep working on the voicing, but this is like pretty much very close to what you will guys be able to get on Saturday. And we'll talk about the interface in a minute and what it comes with and kind of the development plan, but let's play it and listen to it. So this is a sine. It has an oscilloscope built into it, so, right? And then, do you want me to move the circle to bottom left? Is that the main manipulation tool?
I believe the circle on the bottom left modulates the waveforms in each of the segments.
Right. So I'm getting all sorts of really cool waveforms just by moving the white knob that's moving. What is this knob moving?
It's scanning through the wave index. So all the waveforms in WaveRazer are laid out in a table, and it scans through all of those waveform choices in real time. And yeah.
So that just by using this one radar control on the bottom left, I can go to, just listen. So you have just with one control. That's beautiful. I saw this for the first time at the NAMM show in January and immediately realized this is a different take on how to do things than has been done before. So it's really exciting, man. Very exciting. Congratulations to you for.
Thanks so much.
Yeah.
Yeah. The way that we look at things is, there's synthesizers offer so many possibilities for creating interesting sounds. And, we want to try and help people reach all these different possibilities. And like our philosophy is to make new sounds and,
Yes.
try and come up with interesting ideas to, generate hopefully things that people like to hear.
Right. Now this has, as we can see, if you're looking at the interface, it has parameters that have names that you're probably not familiar with. There's, you don't see a filter, you don't see, you see inject. So what does inject do?
Well, the inject is a macro, and that one, if I recall correctly, it changes the tunings of a lot of the different wave segments in different ways. And once you change the tuning of the waveform, it changes the phase, right?
Right.
So the sine wave is no longer a nice continuous sine wave. It becomes, things with transients in it, and that generates the additional harmonics.
Right.
So once you blow up that phase relationship, then you've got those harmonics in whatever note that you've got until you release it. And then if you launch a new voice, then it's resynced in phase, and it's a sine wave again.
So let's
so
listen.
That's why I'm calling it.
Should I move the radar somewhere before I use inject, or just on a sine wave straight?
Yeah, if you move it back to the sine wave straight, then you can really hear the inject.
Okay, so here are sine wave straight. Oh, let me recall up the patch because something. So here's inject. Not hearing a lot of change, but on the sine patch, is this macro set up? Do you know, since it's towards the end of the list?
It is, yeah. There's some weird stuff about WAVERAZOR. Like I don't really remember what inject was doing. It might just be changing the slicer, the Razer portion of it.
Yeah.
And here's the thing, like if all the underlying waveforms are, a sine wave in their particular phase, it doesn't matter where you slice it, right? It's all going to be a sine wave.
Right.
Like the slices could happen at any point.
So you wouldn't hear it as an end result, probably.
I'm sorry, I missed that.
So you might not hear the change if it's just a pure sine wave.
That's right. So as soon as you change a little bit of a tuning or move out one of the waves or just make them different, then the Razer parameters start really coming into play.
Let's do this. So I've gone to my audio. My audio just got freaked out for a second. So if I go just to the square patch and use inject, I can't tell if it's doing anything to the sound or not.
I think there's a detune knob there called Super Tune. If you just tweak it a tiny bit, then you start hearing what inject does.
Yes, now we hear a difference.
And also, all of the controls on the right-hand side will come alive too. Those are all usually
the step size,
Razer parameters. Yeah.
So listen to what Super Tune does to the sound. I mean, it goes to supersonic. So that's some of the beauty of this.
Super tune gets really interesting if you've got multi-sync turned on.
If you have multi-sync turned on, where is multi-sync?
It's a button.
Oh, right there. Turn on multi-sync. Forces it to be synchronized and more organized. And you can see the waveform is kind of going into all these separate pieces are being modulated and changed. Look at that. It's like it's alive. Here's without multi-sync. And then you turn on multi-sync. It forces it to become less. What is multi-sync doing?
It's hard sync at multiple points within the waveform. Every segment is an opportunity for us to reset the phase of the wave, and that's basically what hard sync is, like the traditional hard sync sound that we're familiar with from analog synthesizers.
Right.
They reset at every full cycle.
Right.
And I've never seen anything else that does resets within the cycle or beyond a cycle, and that's what we do. We can chop up the waveform into 16 segments, and we can have hard sync happening on every segment.
Yeah.
And it becomes this really thick, crazy hard sync sound that I've never heard before.
Right. Somebody's asking, it kind of sounds like an FM synth.
That's it's not doing FM, but it's generating a lot of harmonics because of the slicing, and they have interactions between the frequency of the slicer and the frequencies of the underlying waveforms.
Right.
I think of it as more like ring mod.
Yeah.
And it goes to that sort of mutant AM concept that we have, on the front panel GUI, as well. It's like every segment can have different, harmonics or fundamental in them, and as you switch to the different segments, that amplitude of those harmonics are always changing.
Right.
Instead of like normal ring mod, where one oscillator is making it, go on and off at a particular frequency, you have in each step the possibility that the harmonic is on or off, or it could be at a different volume level. And so you sort of create this complex matrix of amplitude modulation.
Right.
Dependent on what waveforms you selected for each segment.
Right.
And so you can definitely get these sort of inharmonic frequencies happening in your sound.
Right.
By doing that.
It's crazy. Now, since we've turned on the super tune, that means that we now have access to these parameters on the right side for the mutant AM and step fractal and step size, correct?
Yeah, those will work as soon as there's something that introduces a discontinuity into the waveform.
So I'm just going to move the knobs, guys. Listen to what this sound does when I just change these different parameters. Like step size, it's got almost like an arpeggiator took off.
True, yeah.
If that's with multi-sync on. If multi-sync is off, Wow. Isn't that cool? So the steps, if you get them far enough, you hear the separate pitch that each of the steps is creating. But when you make the step size become smaller than the cycle of a waveform, is that what it is? Where it starts to become...
That's true. It's the step size is basically changing the sort of either fraction or multiplication of a cycle. So you can go down to a 64th of a cycle, or you can go all the way out to 64 multiples of a cycle, and that tends to be more like wave sequencing tempo.
People are calling it what the fuck. They're calling it WTF synthesis.
Well,
it is new. This is new territory. This is not like we've been doing these GuruSynthesis classes, and this is a whole separate discussion on a whole different philosophy towards making sound. That's really exciting. It's and it is a little bit like what are you doing? And I have people asking, and we'll talk about this in a minute. They're asking if there's a mod matrix, if there's loops. So we'll get to those questions in a minute. Let me play around. I'm going to move the step fractal now.
It's actually step fraction.
Yeah, step fraction.
And it's a multiplication that is on top of the step size between 0% and 200%. So you could think of it as kind of a fine tune for the step size.
Okay, so we have step size happening. And it forced everybody to sound kind of nice and normal. Crazy. The range can go quite radical very quickly, but if you get it close to the smaller points, but it can go so far into cool. Just so you guys know, Taiho can't hear what we're doing here, so he's just having to sit here and go, how are you doing?
I'm just going by your facial expressions.
Yeah, right. Here's our sawtooth up. And let's move in. So it's out of control a little bit. Then you hit multi-sync. So remember, we started with a simple sawtooth up sound. So by moving just a couple parameters, why do I have this? I have a delay on the sound, but the FX mix isn't making it go away. I need to double check a couple things. Let's just go to another patch up here real quick. Okay, so on those sign patches, they're still doing voicing, so the ability to change the effects mix on that patch wasn't working quite right. But let's go to multi-sync. What's the now that we're getting into more, that was just with a simple waveform, guys. So that was the start. That was like basics, right? What does multi-sync provide when we look at these patches? Like chop saw?
Those are the fully built out multi-sync patches. They're using 16 segments.
Okay.
The wave patches that you were just looking at before, those are quarter cycles. So four segments creating a single cycle. The 16 segment ones are, I believe there's 4 cycles,
Right.
quarter cycles.
Right. So we can get... There's our super tune. Look at the waveform, guys. This is like, you've not seen waveforms respond and look like this ever before. Hear that sync that's happening? Crazy. So let's talk about the interface a little bit, since this is what people will have with version 1 and then what your plans are for the future.
Okay.
So go ahead. I'll let you explain the way you wish to explain.
All right. Well, the centerpiece of WAVERAZOR is that big circle in the middle. That's giving you your oscilloscope view.
Right.
So you can see what's going on with the output waveform in real time.
Right.
But you also have a waveform view. There's like 3 blue triangles at the top of that center circle, and that's how you select the view for each oscillator. And then the central ring becomes an editor for each wave segment. So around the ring, you'll see a bunch of red segments, and that's how you select the particular segment that you want to work on.
Okay.
And then you can change the pitch and volume for each segment, or the phase, or DC offset. And you can also change the particular waveform that you want to appear in the segment. And then you can save all that. There's a save icon. You can save it in your user bank.
Right.
And there's a lot of stuff that you can do right now, but it's not the full editor for the sounds.
So this is basically a performance editor.
Yeah, yeah. We have probably something like 700 parameters for every oscillator. And then multiply that by 3, and then then you have the rest of the synth to deal with, like the filters, of which you have 3 in series or parallel, and then the effects, and we have tons of envelopes and LFOs.
Yeah, it's based on you add as you need. So if you needed 20 LFOs, you could do that.
Yes.
That's very cool.
And sometimes you really need to do that. Like if you want to do independent modulation of every segment,
yeah,
like even if you used up a single cycle with quarter segments, that's 4 LFOs right there if you want to modulate them all, separately. So, there's a lot of need for deep modulation, and that's built into the system. It's not quite unlimited at this point. We did some optimization because the footprint was pretty big.
Yeah.
But it's still beyond what I need normally to make a patch. So, and I go pretty crazy in some of my stuff. So
right. So when I'm looking, I've got the editor showing me just one waveform. Let's say the second, this is a multi-sync chop, and it's showing a fairly basic, I think there's 2, 3, 4, 5, I think 6 segments or 4 segments, because there's 4, there's 4 segments. How do I change the parameters of one segment with this interface? Say that I wanted to change the first segment, so I've got that lit up, and part of the waveform's lit up. Where am I editing?
So if you've got the first segment lit up,
yes,
then there are 3 triangles around the bottom of that circle, and one should be pitch and volume. It'll give you an XY control for pitch and volume.
Okay.
And then another is phase and DC offset.
Yep.
And then the last one is wave. That should be a red one.
Yes. And so here I could choose from a whole list of possible waveforms for each segment of this waveform. So I could go to number 2 here and have that be the square wave, and then go to the phase, and by just clicking and dragging on a radar screen, and I could hear the change. Let's see. I think I have number 2 on. So if I go to wave, am I on the right place? Let's do this. Let's listen to 1 and be editing 1. And make sure I'm initialized, because I could be having something broken and not even know it. So let's go to wave. So you can hear I'm modifying. In each segment I select, I can change now we've talked about this, so I know the answer, but I'll let you explain. Getting to envelopes, getting to other parameters that you might want to have access to change the sounds.
Well, the envelopes are the big thing. That's what everybody was asking about at NAMM.
Yes.
And so we started working on that pretty much right away, but we haven't had time to finish it.
Okay.
I'm hoping that we'll be able to bring some envelope controls out to the top panel GUI, hopefully within the next couple of revs.
Okay.
Now, we'll release version 1.0 next week.
Yes.
And then our plan is to keep, sprinting and releasing iterations fairly quickly afterwards. Like I was saying, there's a lot of stuff that you can do already.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot more parameters that we want to surface for you guys and make available, because it's a crazy, amount of stuff that you can do, and on the one hand, it's a lot of fun theoretically.
Yeah.
When you come down to actually trying to make a sound, it's a lot to manage. So, we're trying to come up with UI to help with, accessing those parameters in a way that makes it fast and fun to program a sound.
Yes.
And I definitely have more ideas about how to do that now that I've tortured myself with the development editor. for
been developing it for a while. Yeah.
oh man, yeah. It takes a long time right now because there's nothing
Yes.
that really helps the sound designer.
Yeah.
Like every little parameter has to be set.
I can attest to that. This is the developer's version, and if you hit the little star here, it goes to a multi-tabs with lists of computer parameters. There's no graphic interface for things at this point, but that's what they are working on behind the scenes that will be coming out in future revisions. So the version 1 is working and can do some great things. The templates are a whole bunch of different presets. So if you need something of more of a bass preset, you could call up a bass patch and you'll have a fast release and a fast attack time, correct? And then if you go to,
yeah.
So there'll be that would be kind of how you would start with a certain sound that you want to create at this point, would be to use one of the templates of the different types to start with, and then start programming with this interface that you have here to work with. And the circular radar on the right, that's a filter for the most part right now.
Filter. Usually that's set up for filter with cutoff on Y and resonance on X.
Right. But if you wanted to have a larger range to the filter cutoff, at this point you can't get to that, but that's coming in the future.
That's true, yeah.
Cool. So just so we know, this is version 1.0 of a kind of like, your first time being God designing a planet, and so it's the palm trees haven't grown yet, right?
Well, it's kind of like that.
But there's a lot here to play with. I want to both make people understand that there's things that you would expect to have on most synthesizers that might not be here in version 1, but there's a lot of new things that you didn't even know were available because it's new synthesis that are here in 1.0.
That's true. Yeah. I mean, it's a lot of fun as it is already, but you can't control everything yet. And we understand that, and we're working hard to
right.
Build all that stuff out. But I think that as it is, people can get a lot of enjoyment out of it.
Yes.
So, we want to release, and then, I understand that, people, if it's not out yet, then there's some chance that it's not going to get released. But I just wanted people to know that, like, for Rob and I, we've been making synths for, over 20 years now. It's like our life. And now we have our own company where we get to do, the fun things that we want to do.
Yes.
So we're sticking with this for the long term.
Yeah.
We're going to follow up, as quickly as we can with more fun features, and then stick with WaveRazor like Spectrasonic sticks with Omnisphere.
Right. Yeah. No, this is the start of an adventure. People are asking retail price.
Retail price is $75 USD. Mm-hmm. It's a launch special.
Right.
And it's going to stay at that price up until the time that we get the deep editor out.
Okay.
And anybody that buys at that sale price will get the editor update for free.
Right.
But at the time that we do release the editor, that's going to be a lot of work. We'll be raising the price to $150 USD.
Right. Which is that's where you start for the full-fledged synthesizer. So yeah. So you're kind of like, this is your chance to do a Kickstarter and have something to work with at the moment that it starts. Bit
like that, yeah.
Yeah. So it's here's this concept for a synth, and instead of spending money and putting it on hold for when it shows up, next September, you get to download it and play with it in its current form, which is more than acceptable to start with. Now you have also, just so people know, there's an arpeggiator over here, which has patterns. Patches can come with BPM syncing elements. There's some things. Where would I go to find? By the way, the templates were just templates. Then you go to the factory and there's patches. Where would be something to play in the patches that would show the sequencer and some of the internal cool things you can do in a patch?
The well, for the arpeggiator, it works on any patch, and it's sort of a separate thing. So like when you're using the arpeggiator in your session, just call up whatever you need for the patch, and it doesn't change until you change it. So they're not really stored together until you save it with your session.
Right. But just give me the name of a patch to call up so I can kind of show people, here's your 2 days of work on one patch that you're really proud of to show people.
There's one called, I think, Gorgonia Quarta.
Yes.
It's that one's kind of a groove patch.
Okay. So here, we'll play that so you can hear it. So it's doing the drums. Now, how are you doing that when it's only 3 oscillators? Is that 3 oscillators doing each of the elements?
Right. So there's one that's doing the drums and one that's doing kind of a bassy thing, and then another one that's doing a sort of more lead counterpoint thing, I think.
So there you go. I've muted the drums so you can hear just the 2 parts, oscillator 1 and 3. So that's doing a lot of cool, fun. And by moving the controls, it changes all the oscillators simultaneously, right?
Yeah.
Wow. And just so you know, my CPU is barely even blipping with this going on, so.
Nice.
Your optimizations are doing good, my friend.
It kind of has to, because I've kind of got an old knockaround computer that I developed with, and if it wasn't optimized, it would choke right away.
So,
but it's good to think in those terms anyway. We want people to be able to, really get some use out of the plugin. We don't want to take over their computer.
Right, because a lot of times, I'm waiting for Phobos to show up from Spitfire because they're delayed as well. And that's using polyphonic convolution, which to me sounds like I don't know if my computer will be able to play it.
Yeah.
So it's nice that this is coming out and it's doing 3 oscillators with some cool elements and cool sounds. I can manipulate the daylights out of it, and this is real time, guys, to the sound. And there's no samples. This is all synthesis. So that's all synthesis you're hearing. It's beautiful. So if you want new sounds, listen to that. That's really cool. I'm going to just play a couple other patches for a second. Here's Hadar. So let's just bring up the filter so you. So it's easy to get new sounds. Now the effects mixer. Talk about the effects for a second. What's our effect options inside of WaveRazor? Because right now it's only an effects mix knob that we have access to at the moment, right?
That's right. So the effects configuration is going to be whatever the sound designer chooses for you, and so far it's sort of capable of a lot more than I've been able to program.
Yeah, the interface has definitely been a challenge to manage.
Right. So we've had kind of a choice between, building out the effects for each patch and like just getting more patches.
Right.
And hopefully people can rely on their host for some additional, effects. Now I know that, from voice synthesizers for a long time, effects can definitely be part of the sound and you know, an integral part.
Yeah.
And so it kind of pains me that we haven't been able to build out all the effects to the extent that I would like to.
Right.
But there is an effect on every patch. It's probably it can range from something simple to something, you know, a little bit more interesting. Like there's some interesting bit reduction stuff that happens. We've got you know, modulatable delays. So I've got one that does kind of a glitchy thing, and at the moment I forget where that is. Yeah, it's 3 buses. They can be routed into and out of each other. There's some feedback paths.
Yes.
All the parameters are modulatable in WaveRazer, including the effects parameters.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of capability in there. I just haven't had a chance to make it happen yet.
Yeah.
One thing that's particularly notable is that we don't have a reverb in there yet.
Okay.
It's something that is on our list to come, you know, fairly quickly after version 1.0 release.
Right. You got to get at least the envelopes, and then you can look at reverb. Well, yeah. since like you said, you don't have the resources of a company that's got, you guys are working on this part of the engine, and you guys are doing this, and you have a little team working on patches. It's you and Rob, and that's basically it.
That's definitely it. Yeah. But it's, you know, it's definitely on our minds too. It's not an oversight. And we've gone through these sorts of things with other projects. Like, you know, when I worked on Ion, there was another product manager that was working on that, and sort of their philosophy was to create a synth that didn't spend, you know, money working on, like, you know, working effects into the synth that people would just turn off and use their own effects when they go to a session, right? So you had this synthesizer that shipped without any effects on it, and it, you know, it doesn't demonstrate well in the store. When you hear it, it's like, oh, this is kind of a dry thing. You really do need that
how it sounds in a production is important sometimes.
Yeah. And so when we did Micron, which was the same engine in a different package, we definitely put an effects chip in there.
That helped.
And of course, that thing sold really well. So, you know, it's kind of a balancing act when you're developing, like, you know, what is going to be the best way to get something done, but also useful for the customer.
Right.
And in the case of WaveRazer, we had to kind of make some decisions about what to include in version 1. And we know that it's a pretty glaring omission, so we're going to go after that very quickly.
Well, I've worked with the insides, and I can tell you guys that the filters there's actually multiple, like we looked at filters in our last Guru lessons, and there's multiple filters of all sorts of beautifulness that sound really, really impressive. So the tools are there, yeah.
There's a patch called Babylon 5.
Babylon 5, yeah.
That's the 3 filters in series set to vocal formant frequencies.
All right, let's listen to that real quick. Here's Babylon 5. This is 3 filters, which actually is unique. Most synthesizers might give you 2 filters to work with, but you have 3 in a series?
Yes.
So from one into the next to the next, and little Daft Punky. And then again, you have your controls to intensify. And take it to all sorts of different places. and then back to normalish. That's very cool.
And that is not that's not like, you know, one format filter. That's actually a high pass, a low pass, and a biquad in between that's generating the vocal formant peaks. So you have complete control over what, you know, vocal formants you go after.
So you're making your own formant filter, basically.
Right, yeah.
That's really cool. Awesome. Well, this has been a great introduction, I think, to get people excited. And it's an investment into a company that is going to grow. And as updates come out, it will be like Christmas time all the time. Hey, look what we have now. Look what we have now.
Yeah, well, we're working on the presents right now. We're in our little workshop.
I know. You need an elf hat.
If it helps, I'll do it.
Awesome. Well, thank you for your time and for your commitment to trying not to just make another synthesizer that has parameters based on. You guys are definitely going for, you know, new goalposts that haven't, you know, it's one of my favorite quotes from Steve Jobs is, you don't know that you need something until it exists. And so this is a good example of that. And there's more room to grow because the ability for us to personalize it as a programmer will come in the future. We're starting with what MOK, their team of Taiho, was putting out to start with, and then it's like each update we're going to have more tools to go in and work with this engine and learn and get things out of it. So it's a relationship we're starting with the synthesizer, which is really cool. It's a different approach. It's not like, here's this synth, like, you know, Break Tweaker still has never been updated except for one small update in 2.5 years. This is one where there will be updates on a pretty regular basis, adding significant abilities to it. So I like this approach better than isotopes.
Yeah, we're definitely in it for the long haul. We love synthesizers, and we want to make this work. Yes. And I can't wait to hear what you guys at Plugin Guru are going to do with it. I'm thankful that you took the time to take a look at the development editor, but man, what a pain that is. And
me and a couple of the guys took a look at the editor, and we did a couple Skype sessions with Taiho, and it's like, maybe we should wait until we have a graphic editor before you guys start to really, because, you know, again, he's trying to make patches to get this out, and you can't stop and like start, you know, WAVERAZOR's school with a couple of people to try to get them up to speed, because that stops Taiho from making the patches that he needs to make to get it out the door. So it's like,
well, it kind of wastes you guys' time too, because, you know, it's better if the tools are more transparent so that your talent, you know, can be applied quickly. And it's management. It's better to wait until the point where it's ready.
Agreed. But I'm thrilled to be able to help this way of just sharing it, and I'm excited that it's coming out. And I've been a fan of your work for a long time, and we've been good friends for a long time. So it's great to see people have the opportunity, and we live in a world where two guys, or even, you know, me, I can make patches and make this to make it available to people. Here's two people that have been in the universe of synthesis that get together and say, hey, let's do something cool, and bang, we have this new synthesizer that 1 week from today you can have in your hands that makes sounds from an engine that's being patented because it's so new. So that's thrilling stuff, dude. Very thrilling.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Let me see. I haven't been following chat a whole lot. Do you guys have any questions? There's 61 people currently watching, which is great on YouTube alone, and there's a whole bunch of people in the live stream chat. I've got 2 chats going on. Do you guys have any questions for Taiho while we have him here? Pop them up, and I will monitor the 2. It's kind of challenging to... did you say there is an early access alpha version? that's basically what next Saturday is the release of 1.0, which it's not an alpha because it's fully working. It's been beta tested. I've been using it some. It's not crashing, but we are at stage 1 of a multi-stage development of an instrument that you guys get to be in on. Right? What is your IQ?
I have no idea.
Does it have a randomizer?
It feels like it has a randomizer.
You know, I mean, I think just moving this knob right here. Randomizing is kind of a thing it automatically does. Because this is new synthesis, a lot of times you're going to move a parameter and not you can't predict what it's going to do to the sound, right? Yeah.
Well, yeah. It's really interesting in that you were talking a little bit about looking at the waveforms and what they're like in the different segments, and you and I have looked at waveforms for probably tens of thousands of hours, right?
Yes.
And I have never really stopped to think about the physics of the waveform, like what does that squiggly line that I'm looking at really mean for what frequencies it produces, and then dropping that sort of idea into the WAVERAZOR concept,
Yeah.
and then really starting to figure out what it means to have that angular line in that one segment.
Right.
Has been really interesting, really eye-opening for me.
Right. This is like surgical. It's like nano microsurgery of a waveform.
Yeah. And I've never seen that stuff happen before. Like during development we'd look on the internet and try and find if anybody has written anything about it, and
Right.
We're at the point where we're trying to come up with names for things and just not really knowing what what is it conceptually. What's a good name for it?
Right.
What are all the things that it can do? And I still feel like I haven't discovered everything about it. It's it's fairly deep, like FM is deep, in the sense that the frequency relationships between the Razer and the segment waveforms,
Yes.
produces a lot of like interesting harmonics and interactions, and maintaining that relationship does some interesting stuff. Like I couldn't hear what you were tweaking, but generally you want to grab a knob and then turn it all the way up and turn it all the way down and see that. But there's a lot of subtle little things like in FM where you hunt around and do little small movements and you find really crazy stuff.
Right. By the way, out the door, I've changed it just so you know. We have all sorts of, here's Psycho. And for language, I've modified it so it's displaying right now in Klingon.
Right.
But let's change it to Sanskrit. So here's Sanskrit if we so desire. Is there a MIDI learn?
How not in the plugin. You'd have to do it through your host.
You do that through your host, but does it register? Oh, that's a cool look. I've got it set to Brighty. That'll wake you up in the morning if you come play with that. But if you wanted to control these parameters with your sequencer, if I just went to host and started, I haven't tried it, but I would assume it just would automate, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Yay. What about the concept of wavetables? What about samples? Is that something that this can do, or is this synthesis just its own thing, and that's a different option that this does not have? I've got people asking that.
It's definitely possible, and I've done it already. The problem with samples for right now is that you tend to need to have some editing user interface. Like you might want to have a multi-sample editor so you can map out the zones and stuff.
Right.
So it's possible. It's probably coming. I don't know exactly when. Because there's a lot of other UI that we need to get done first.
Right.
It depends on, we're available to contact,
Right.
just sort of generally.
Right.
Um, you know,
So this engine that you have isn't like preset. It has some open-ended abilities to it.
right. Yeah. Like I've worked in the hardware world for such a long time. It's kind
Right.
of refreshing and interesting to work in software where you can actually just change stuff.
I know, right?
So yeah, it's great. So yeah, just like if there's stuff that people want,
Yeah.
I'd encourage to contact us at mock.com and just put your vote in, and we're small enough that we can actually respond to people.
Right.
So
Awesome. Okay,
yeah.
so a lot of the things people are asking for, I mean, the feature set might not have some of those things at this moment, but it's not out of the question. If you guys want to contact Taiho, go to mock.com, MOK.com, and you can contact and start a conversation up and say, I've got some ideas. I saw what this is doing. And, I would suggest you get version 1 to work with to get familiar with what it has in its spectrum. And then if you have ideas, yeah. Communication is a good thing on the internet. It's very easy these days. So awesome. Well, let's see if there's any other questions. I have some people that say I don't understand. Can we hear the presets before you sign off? Let me go through a couple more of the presets, because we started with the templates. There's also under factory, and then there's user is where you will save your own user presets, I'm assuming. So here's Arrhenius. And I'm just not going to even touch real-time stuff, just so you can hear some.
That's where all the fun is, though.
I know. Okay, you made me move some controls. We played Babel for a second. Basic. But not basic because it's... But hear the sound? There's a depth to this. It's really nice. Biodiversity. Cool. Chimera. I'm playing one note. So what's Chimera doing? It's doing the step sequencing, and I'm able to change the waveform, and it's what's that doing?
It's got a big step size for the Razer. So it's basically set up to be more of a wave sequencer. And every step you can change the pitch. So that's what's getting the sequence out of it. I think there's also an option to go to audio rate on that.
Where would I do that?
Is there a button that says audio rate on there?
Yes. So these buttons can be different names.
Yes.
All right, go to audio. Let me reset it. So let's go back to just and hit audio rate. So now it's at a much faster rate playing those segments, correct?
Yeah, it's going to be still the same pitches, but all blended together, and that's what happens, when you switch between tempo and frequency, which is another interesting concept area to explore.
Right. Wow. Okay, that's something you haven't heard before. Here's Dauntless. Yeah, people are saying it's a very in-your-face sound.
Yeah, that's a characteristic of WaveRazer because of, I mean, the nature of it, slicing up the waveforms. It generates all these different discontinuities in the wave, and that means harmonics. So it can get very buzzy very quickly.
Yeah.
And I don't know if people remember from the NAMM show that like I voiced everything with the filters wide open, because that's kind of the main concept of WaveRazer, is getting like all these harmonics happening out of a single oscillator.
Right. That's kind of the interest.
Yeah, as we just touched on, there's a pretty powerful filter section in there too. So
right.
You know, we want to be able to generate a lot of harmonics, and then we want to be able to sculpt them.
Right. Awesome. By the way, if you also go, someone's pointing out in the comments that if you go to mok.com, you can subscribe for updates so that Taiho can communicate with you guys and let you know about progress, how things are going, when it comes out, what's planned for the updates. I'm sure there'll be all sorts of communication flowing once this gets out the door. So great. Well, thank you for joining me. This has been a very fun. I want to do more segments like this. So maybe after it comes out, if there's an update, we can have another weekend hang or something like that and talk about what's been added to it.
Absolutely. I'd love to.
Cool. Awesome. I'm guessing you guys bumped into each other. Oh, that's another. I get these guys in forums. They just start having these conversations with each other. So Yamada-san is channeling Don Buchla with this thing. There you go.
That is a high compliment, and
yes.
I hope to be worthy of that someday.
Is this a resizable interface?
At the moment,
I don't think it's set to do that, but
it's not. No, but it's all vector based. So
okay.
At some point, I think we can do that.
Great. All right. Needs a Godzilla factor parameter, I think.
I can name one that.
Yeah, the just rename things and off you go. Okay. Thank you for agreeing to come along and be a part of the weekend. It's been great to show something. Skippy, persuade Taiho to put in your favorite absinthe envelopes. I was talking in our envelope segment that absinthe has the most powerful envelopes because every segment can be modulated to a slider. So you can have some sliders that change with one slider, changing certain envelope levels. And, I wouldn't doubt if you could do that here.
We can do that to a certain extent. It's hard to do that in real time because the envelope, is already in motion, and you have to, keep track of it and update it.
Right.
Currently, we're not doing that, but it's software, so we just need to, apply ourselves.
Right.
If a lot of people want these things,
right,
then it's going to get in.
Right. Awesome. Well, thank you again. We're going to get into talking about effects now. But we will let you go so I don't crash my computer when I start calling up things.
All right. Thank you so much, Skippy. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah. So everybody say bye to Taiho, and thank you again for joining us. And we'll talk to you soon, okay?
All right. Bye, guys.
All right. Bye. All right. Wow. So, yeah, it is very new. It has a whole different sound to it, and what's really kind of fun with this is we don't know everything it can do yet. It's that new that there's a lot of room for development. I did try to work with it some, and I don't think he will mind if I hit this button, but basically this is how the editor looks right now. Is you have all of these different tabs that go to categories that are. It doesn't really it doesn't their language and their way of thinking is there's no envelopes. There's no little click and drag to change graphic envelopes right now. So I couldn't get too far past that because there's other stuff going on at the same time. But it's very, very cool. My PIP signal is lost. Kid Anthem, what does that mean? PIP signal. What do you mean? Kid Anthem, what do you mean? So we can play a couple more patches. It's a very different sound. Oh, picture in picture. Oh, no, pick. Oh. Oh, because of Skype. Hold on one second here. Let's see. Camera.